What's going on? My name's Mac and you're here for a very cool installment of the Adrenalin software update on top of tech news that we're going to be getting into. First and foremost, for a cliff note, one of the things we're going to be going side by side with is 2020 versus 2019 and their standards and their optionals to see what is better for today's market on downloading on your GPU. Also, looking on past that, I'm going to be showing what I had to do to my 3970X in order to make it function and MacGyver it back to working order. I literally had to destroy my 3970X to bring it back to working standards. So go ahead and sink your teeth into that for today's episode. My name is Mac, you're here at the MacGyver 7th channel. All tech related information is coming up at your next. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's going to happen for as far as the patchwork of what AMD is throwing down for the brand new work before we get into benchmarks, before we get into any other cliff notes. With looking first off the bat of what the 20.2.2 offers for as far as a plethora of fixed issues that are going to be coming down the roster as we take a look deeper into the situations of what they've updated. So let's go ahead and dive in directly to AMD's site. Then I do have pulled up, and you can already start downloading the software if you choose and you're wanting to go towards the optional. Fortunately, as a little bit of a spoiler, it's pretty good, and you're going to like the results as we get down to the benchmarks as everything goes down to it. But every GPU is going to have a different performance, so if you find that it doesn't, then drop a comment down below. Your boy Mac would like to know. But looking at the performance tasks of what is going to happen with the Radeon software for as far as enabling or some third-party applications with hardware accelerations running in the background may cause the system to be hanging up in the black screen. I noticed that a lot within the range of their standard, which was their 20.1.3, I believe, between now and the variation of the 22.2, which is actually pretty decent nowadays. I've noticed it actually has fixed the issue. Looking on importantly for as far as made to allow for more responsive fan ramping and ramping down for the 5700 RX series, which was needed in order for it to be more optimal with inside the temperature range. Now, prior cliff note to what I was mentioning with the black screen flickering, this is on a Radeon 7, so if you are having issues, again, drop a comment down below. The Wattman makes the list next for the incorrect power reading levels for as far as the clock speeds on the RX 5700 during the games and workloads. Looking at the TDR for as far as the black screens that may occur during launches in the applications, for as far as the replayability when it's enabled. The black screens may occur when toggling in the HDR for as far as the game and settings for Battlefield 5. Witcher 3 also makes the fix list as you look at the Wild Hunt and many experiences and applications hangups for as far as the black screens during the application's certain parts and the intermittent points of gameplay. So they fixed a lot of the flickering screens, I'm hoping, for a lot of people, and there won't be that many comments for as far as detailing why it still remains as we look at the black screens yet again making the list for the RX 5000. Oh, you can basically say at that portion of it the 5000 series, and the graphics products for as far as the hardware acceleration portions as they enabled inside of the DLCs. Inside of Metro, you will see a fix for as far as Sam's story on top of that. Now, looking at the portion of Grand Theft Auto 5, where some of the applications invoke the software with Radeon and the overlays and the third-party OSD application running. Monster Hunter Worlds also makes it within the Iceborne, may experiencing intermittent crashes within idols and character within these creation screens. It's nice to see them pushing forward very well with a great situation of fixes. As we move on past the Monster Hunters, some games and the colors apply very washed out in the HDR. It has been enabled for as far as in Windows on the 5700 card series in the products. You should have gained back some colors after this update. After the factory reset install, with keeping my setting options, choose the instant replay could fail to the function in the enabling portion of the Radeon software install. Now, personally myself, if you're going to go ahead and do a factory resetting, you might as well just reset your settings, because maybe some of your settings weren't working well, and you can try to figure that out from like enabling those. But that's just personally from my humble experience and what I figured out has worked and what's not worked as testing the Radeon software continues and grows in knowledge. With inside the invoking Radeon software overlay, making the list for as far as fixes and opening, the obvious flickering in the games between that interface is now fixed. Radeon may experience some crashes within the messages within locking the windows or performance in the sleep and the hibernation, which I experienced a lot during the stream tab opens. That would also be something that would be fixed on this list. So there's a lot of great stuff. I'm definitely digging this. It's a little bit of a longer episode we're gonna have, but there's a lot of cool stuff to stay tuned to as we look into the fixes that come into play as we look down past and what are still on the known list we haven't even gotten to for as far as the situation. But going on to the very next thing, fans and fam, for technology, we look at as far as the Radeon software overlay is disabled in games and running in the background where that may fail to launch. As far as Battlefield 5 and the experience and the hang up on the TDR when the experience in the periods for as far as the play, with some intermittent gameplay, you'll experience some overlay hiccups before, now you should not. Origins also makes the list for as far as the failed detected or may detect incorrect games between that Radeon software, which is pretty interesting for as far as what we look a little bit deeper directly inside of those patch notes. And we can see that right now as far as the productivity applications being detected in the list of the software gaming tab seems to be a very widespread issue between games and applications with inside the software that they fixed. Hopefully you got dialed in. Radeon Chill and the hotkey sometimes continue to remain enabled when utilizing their disable to remove that between the hotkey. And Red Dead Redemption 2 makes the list on top of also Nvidia, I noticed. So it means probably more than likely Rockstar reached out to both of them with a decent fix, hopefully for most of you people, because it definitely seems they're tuning the environment, because this is some of the textures inside the snow terrain, which is different than what Nvidia had. They had a whole other thing. You can watch my patch notes on that. I can get into that in detail, but this is kind of cool. So that means a lot more of the white, like more reflective terrain has now been fixed for as far as that in Red Dead Redemption. I'm really excited to hear the community of people that are out there to play that game. For as far as the resuming from sleep with Chrome may experience some application hiccups with the videos in the previous play on the RX 5700 card, and that wasn't only directly for that. I noticed even on my Radeon 7 card, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people chime in on the comments down below. Yeah, I've experienced that too. So that was kind of a widespread thing, I would assume. Now looking at for as far as the FreeSync status within the software, and may experience some failed when they're updating and enable and disable as far as the features inside of itself, which seems like a tongue-tied hot mess, but I'm glad that they fixed that syncable point. And then Fortnite may experience some applications on the RX 500 series, the hybrid graphics cards, and that is really nice to hear that they are taking a look at that, because I do notice that a lot of people notice when updates come that Fortnite is one of those games that is affected by AMD cards sometimes, but it is kind of on the developer and AMD to communicate with each other to make sure that that's ironed out for the player. The player shouldn't have to look for fixes, in my personal opinion. But if you do, I mean, I will see what I can do. I even have a video about what you can and can't do sometimes. But I wanted to take the time to explain what I mean by how I destroyed my 3970X and then brought it back to life to work way better. And as you can see, picture 1 to picture 2, you can see where I kind of milled it over, and luckily I got the bravery from Gaming Nexus and Bearded Hardware, who are great creators on YouTube, and they are basically showing how they milled it over and how these things were completely soldered and how it warps it towards the center. But what I found out was actually not only the center, but one corner is a little bit more lifted. But I'm going to leave that. As you can see, the mirror finish is a success, and we're going to go even farther with another follow-up video after this, as you can stay tuned for that, and I'm just going to leave that as the clip note before we dive into the known issues. What I did want to talk about right now is as far as what's going on in the tech industry is there is a huge scare with containers not coming in for us and our supplies, and we're going to watch stuff start to go up. If you can find what's your favorite AMD card, or you've been waiting for this time and it's still in stock for that decent price, I would buy it. More than likely, it's not going to be that price for much longer. As supplies dwindle, there are going to be hikes, and we're going to start looking at, like, more than likely prices that went back from like 2017 for as far as the way that hardware was kind of going up a little bit. Now, I'm not saying go buy everything, but just keep an eye on your stuff and make sure that if you start to see increases in prices, that you make that leap to want to make that investment towards the future. If you've been eyeing a piece of technology, if it be AMD, Nvidia, Intel, anything on the market right now, it's going to be an interesting like next few weeks as we look at what's going to happen for as far as supplies. But as looking on past that I wanted to put to that cliff note, I also do have a fun way that you can make the right decisions that I'll put at the very end of this episode. Right now, I think we should go ahead and take a look at the known issues and get right back to the patch notes. With the known issues that are still at hand, the black screen may occur within the enabled same games for as far as the system configurations. Now, enabling the sync between the temporary disable from the game profile and any other users may experience the issue with the enhanced sync enabled. Should disable it to temporarily have a workaround. Before, the performance issues on the metric overlay were more prevalent. Now we're looking at the Radeon Wattman incorrectly having a higher than expected idle clock on the 5700 card in the series of graphics cards, and the performance power consumption is not impacted. It's incorrectly reading and reporting that information to you. Now, is a known issue, which seems like something that they used to have with the Radeon 7 with a high clock idle. Now, for as far as looking at the Doom may experience some intermediate system hangups in the application currently having a crash during the gameplay, which sucks. You also have a situation where the desktop cursor may intermediately remain visible after toggling the Radeon software inside of the games. A workaround to bring some of the games to the task switch is to refresh the cursor. Now, looking at the system hangups where it may occur when running inside of Final Fantasy, the Shadow Bringers inside of the benchmarks. Looking at the game tab in the Radeon software and the display, the folder's locations appear as the games in the Radeon software may occur inside of an incorrect window for as far as what they are looking at for as the previous size open. Modifying the HDMI scaling slider causes the FPS to become locked at 30 while looking inside of the exhibited shutters that come down to the gameplay within the RX 5000 series card. The intermittent shutters continue on with the instant replay for the third-party applications in the stream performance and the capture portions in the screen. A potential workaround is to disable the features for the application while gaming. Looking outside of the Radeon Adrenalin 2.2, the resolves may have many black screen same issues. AMD is aware of these situations and experiencing the system's hangups in an extended period of gameplay. AMD is continuing to monitor and investigate the situation, so even though a lot of these things did make the list, they are doing their great due diligence in order to make sure that we are going to have there. If you want to go ahead and download this, I left a link down below where you can completely get started on your path of downloading. Now let's get to the juicy part, the benchmarks. The part that we've been waiting for. Is 2019 good? Is the optional better? Is standard still cool? Is 2020 kicking its butt? A lot of questions a lot of people have. Do the added benefits of all the software development tools that you have between an application now, is it worth it to have these things? The security updates that they put on top of this, all these questions that you should be asking. We're going to get down to the portion of looking at just plain scores to see, do they match up with the DirectX 11, DirectX 12, and are there improvements with inside of those portions under pressure? So let's go ahead and take a look at our first scores. With a cliff note that I should say, the 20.2.1 did have very good results from the last benchmarks that we did. Now looking at this is not the 20.2.1. This is the standard of 2019 before they exited, which brings us to the 1911.2. One of the standards that I liked personally myself with looking inside of there. Now we're going to be measuring this against the 1912.1, which was the exiting optional that they gave us to see, look at this. So with looking at the two, and we already see that this is the portion of the standard. Now looking at the optional, you can see with inside of Time Spy Extreme, this is our DirectX 12 at 4K, that there's a decreasement inside of the 2019 software as they exit. So again, their standard is actually pretty decent versus looking at the optional 2019, it kind of dwindles a little bit. Now if we jump over to the 2020 software, where we're looking at the 20.1.3, which is the standard that they're recommending, you can see that there's some actually, well, decreasements from even like the optional of 2019 and then looking at the standard. So why update? But if you looked at the last episode, and I definitely say you should check it out, I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's tons of watch time there for you fun techies and techettes. But the point being is that the 20.2.1 did show increasements past this. So when you look at the 20.2.2 and you see a pretty juicy score of 4K kind of going up to that 4808, you can see increasements even pushing past the 20.2.1 optional of last few weeks ago. There's huge increasements that come for this for as far as performance inside of your GPU tuned. So far this is pretty good. DirectX 12 at its extreme points, it's shown some pretty good increasements from 2019 going up to the very optional of 2020. So if your favorite games are on that platform, then this is kind of a good switch for you, and you get a ton of really cool software tools for sharpening and increasements on the amazing Radeon software that they continue to try to increase. I do admit that there are fallacies, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's super freaking amazing, that it's just it doesn't need to be fixed, otherwise we wouldn't be having these patchworks and I wouldn't be here talking to you guys and gals about this kind of stuff. But let's go ahead and go to just the regular time spy. How does it measure up with 1080p? So with that being said, we dive directly into what the actual physical portion of what our benchmarks are. With a closer look of the DirectX 12 in the 1080p format, you can see that the standard of yesterday, which we're looking at, are 1911.2, and as it measures up directly to its comparative optional as it exits, you can see that actually it gives you a little bit of benefit in the 2019 software as it exits and gets a little bit more performance. But when that measures up against our 2020 software, looking at our 20.1 variation of what's going to happen, you can see a very good increasement. For as far as the scores, that's almost about 50. Now again, as we looked at last time's episode, for as far as that, I wish it was last week. They usually pump out week after week, but they took their time with this one. So you can see that there was improvements as well as looking at this versus what was going on towards the optional. But when we look at today's optional, the 20.2.2, there's still increasing performance. That's pretty freaking cool as it continues to increase the benefit of my card of the Radeon 7. So AMD is doing a pretty decent job when you look at optionals in the 2020 software department nowadays. Now when taking a look at the DirectX 11, you can see a very different format for as far as the way we're looking at 1080p rolling around. Looking at the original standard of 2019, there are some benefits of 2019 with running DirectX 11 with the variations from DirectX 12. Looking a little bit deeper into what I mean, you can take a look at the standard. Then we look at the optional. There's pretty good increasements for as far as this. Now when we look at 2020s, versus the standard to standard, yes, there are definitely some increasements. But when we go optional to optional, there are actually decreasements. Now again, with a grain of salt, I'm just looking at this test as it is 1080p with a very good performing card. So you can definitely see where there can be variables. It's just like playing with a 2080 Ti, two different brackets, I understand, but they're still going to have a lot more variable room of breathing within the 1080p market. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out was this is what happens when you run something under load, because all these tests that I'm running don't have loads. I'm taking it very just running on ice basically with a jetpack, and you're just really gliding. But this is with OBS open, this is with a lot of program running, so you can see that there's a percent knockdown, the physics, everything else kind of takes a hit a little bit. But one other fun thing I wanted to point out too was this was the last standard that we had prior to it, and those tests came out really great. But you can see that even when you look at the old school, well, how is it getting so much of a big variable? That is one of the reasons I found out the sweet spot of RAM. I used to run a 38 at a 14 latency, and the Infinity Fabric work really well on certain things, but it loves its sweet spot of 36. Once I knocked it down to 36 with a 14 latency, I was able to increase my scores drastically on top of the modification that I did to the 3970X, giving it a little bit more breathing room. You can definitely see that there are improvements with a 3% of it being able to push the GPU, as well as the GPU just being able to run with this Infinity Fabric being tightened in that situation. So there are joys of hitting that sweet spot of RAM on top of having a very flat surface for that bonding of the heat material and the heat sink to finally be able to transfer at an optimal range where it's not creating an air bubble because of a defect. But now taking a peek at the DirectX 11 pushing to the extreme fire strike test. This is the original standard of 2019. We're going to go ahead and take a look very quickly as the nominal point increasement happens with their optional of 2019. Now looking at 2020s, you can see that there's a big decreasement, but again, they added a lot more functionality to the way that you can actually utilize the Radeon software. So it's understandable they're going to take a hit. That with security updates, it's going to happen, but you can see that they push forward. In this update that they're trying to push a little bit forward. So it definitely seems like the new optional is extraordinarily tuned towards DirectX 12. DirectX 11 seems like it's making improvements from the 2019 going to the 2020, but there are room for improvements when you go to the 2019 software if you're doing 1080p gaming and you don't need the functionality of a whole bunch of settings. Now looking at the final ultra test. This is where it gets surprising, and this is where you can kind of see what their focus is getting into, where the older software, yes, 2019 can be very good for a 1080p game, but when it comes down to 4K format, they are doing a really good improvements on top of this. This is our original skull for 2019 and our standard. This is our optional as we go inside of some of the improvements, which are kind of interesting as you kind of go past that the 74 mark. But when you look at 2020s, you see their standard drops down. So when you look standard to standard, you're like, that's not really desirable. It seems like that you win with the optional 2019, but no, when you look at the 2020 optional, you see that there's big improvements within the 4K department. So DirectX 11, DirectX 12, which is polished right around it, you're definitely getting more benefits, as where it seems like in this update, you're taking a little bit more of a hit when it comes down to 1080p performance, but you're getting more stability of what they've been hammering out for as far as the flickering screens and other bugs that you basically have encumbered to play your favorite games. So long story short, is it worth it to upgrade? Personally, in my opinion, I think yes. Go with their new optional, see if it works for you. If it doesn't work and you're having issues, go to 2019 and more of their like optional, the final optional, which would be really great for 1080p gaming right now at this point in time, as you can kind of see for minute portions of DirectX 11. So that's pretty much where I'm going to sum up everything for as far as that. To go into small details of what we'll be looking at towards the future testing of like where the Radeon software will be going, I'm more excited to look at where they can progressively get better and better and better in the 1080p department and the DirectX 11. And that's what I'm hoping that they kind of polish out. So this is your boy MacGyver7 saying thank you so much for tuning in for this tech news, this tech related awesomeness, and for me promoting a little bit of a nice project that I'll be recording very shortly, explaining why I did it and how I did it, for as far as the why I destroyed my 3970X to make it work better again. Very interesting title as it kind of goes into that situation of like, why would you mess with $2,000? Well, I'll tell you why. And it worked. But long story short, what I'm going to get into the portion of is, if you're new to the network, you can always subscribe. It's absolutely free, helps me as a creator. And if you do today, who knows, maybe AMD will start sending me free loot to MacGyver. That'd be kind of cool. I'll take all their defective stuff and make it work again. Anyways, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, everyone. Oh, and also, if you have a opportune moment to definitely digest the stock market right now, it is a buyer's market by AMD. It's very cool. I even have a way that you can get started for a really cool program that I like personally myself. I utilize as like kind of doing my own trading information of stocks and cool stuff like that, which is Robinhood, a great, safe, free to trade app that I utilize. And I'll have a link down below if you wanted to get started on that. That is absolutely free. You even get a free stock from it from just signing up utilizing my affiliate code, which I get my benefit of getting a free stock too, but it helps you guys and gals get started on that market if you're interested in that. And I would definitely say buy all the technology right now. It's a buyer's market. It is, honestly. But also keep wind of your prices on your technology, because those are subject to rise in the next few like months. I kind of see and foresee in that situation, on top of big Navi that's going to be coming out, and I'm very curious to see what ends up happening with the supplies. And I'm going to start doing Tech Talk Tuesdays for my channels, just so we can have a little bit more of a well-rounded, refined thing for these patch notes, and it can be a little bit more of a tech talk, just in a well-rounded stuff. So everyone, have a nice day. It's almost 25 minutes deep into this. Cheers if you've stayed this long. I appreciate you. Have a nice day. You're awesome. And I'll see you guys and gals in the near future for more tech-related information. So, end result, 2020 is looking pretty sexy nowadays for as far as the software and the Adrenalin. With all the benefits that you get and the performance that's trending, they're doing a great job. They just need to get rid of the flickering screen. All right, everyone, it's your boy Max signing out, saying have a nice one.